Has the Fed screwed up so bad there won't be enough money for the next recession? So this bumbling central bank of ours is running out of options, with production and jobs saying we are headed straight for a recession. But given inflation is stuck above 5%, the Fed is a deer in the headlights, afraid to do what it normally does, which is pump out easy money to euthanize the bust. They're still pumping out money, of course, bailing out banks and rich depositors. But the question is, what happens when that recession hits full force, yet inflation is still high? How do they handle the deafening calls for trillions in fresh bailouts and handouts? Will there be enough money? Now, at this point, we have a 20-year pattern where each recession gets trillions in bailouts and stimulus payments. In the 2008 crisis, Bush spent $150 billion to, quote, stimulate consumer spending, while Obama added another $800 billion in stimulus. Naturally, big companies also got their money, at least the ones with expensive lobbyists. GM got $50 billion from taxpayers, plus several billion on an insane program that literally bought old cars, poured concrete into the engines to destroy them in order to stimulate new car sales, called cash for clunkers. Yes, people were that dumb. Then, of course, the mother of 2008's bailouts, the nearly $4 trillion going to the banks and the financial system, featuring $900 billion from Treasury, $1.5 trillion from the Fed in a series of, quote, emergency lending measures, which should sound very familiar at this point, and another $1.75 trillion in Fed asset purchases, called QE. It turns out QE1. There were several more. Now, they recycled that bailout script during COVID. So they had trillions in stimulus checks and the PPP program to buy lockdowns by trying to save at least some of the businesses, and then trillions more in financial support and QE to the financial sector. In total, deficits in those 3 years of COVID came to $7.3 trillion. That was $60,000 per household on your tab. So that at this point is the new normal. Each recession, the bailouts and the handouts get bigger. In fact, you'd have to go back to 2001 when Friends was the top show and Tony Soprano was still setting Paulie Walnut straight to find a recession that didn't feature bailouts and handouts. The problem is that in both 2008 and 2020, inflation was running 2.5%, just a smidge above the Fed's target, close enough for government work. Inflation is currently running at 5.5% and rising, with the Fed apparently panicked that it can't stop it, panicked to the point it's crashing banks on purpose. This means that when next recession, the deafening calls come from lobbyists, activists, and their little congressional playthings, there won't be enough inflation to soak it up. It goes right to prices. Groceries, rent, cars, eggflation on steroids. Now, in theory, that would be a good thing. It would mean they can't do bailouts and stimulus, so the recession would be over faster. Of course, that's not how it works. They can't control themselves. They will instead pray that mainstream media can sugarcoat the inflation on profits or unions or Putin or the global warming fairies. If people believe that, the pressure's off and double-digit inflation is back on the menu. If, miraculously, Americans stop believing the media, then Washington and the Fed are backed into a corner, at which point millions of Americans, perhaps even thousands of bankers, will be shocked to discover that in a real recession, one without the trillion-dollar bubble wrap, they are on their own. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.